The top focus at this hour. India is a secular country, a country where all religions are to be treated equally in the eyes of law, where the state has no role in managing the religious activities of any faith. But that isn't the case. Only Hindu religious institutions are managed by the state currently. Today, the Karnataka government has decided to change that.
Karnataka Congress chief D.K. Sivakumar has opposed the move, calling it a historic blunder by the Basavaraj Bommai government. D.K. Sivakumar has alleged it's a conspiracy to hand over cash-rich temples in Karnataka to the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, the RSS and its affiliates. The Congress has decided to protest.
In 2020, the government of Tamil Nadu submitted a report to the Madras High Court stating that in about 12,000 temples in the state, there is no puja or ritual taking place as there is very less or no revenue at all. In 34,000 temples, there is only one person to manage all the affairs of the space, while 37,000 temples record a revenue less than Rs 10,000 per annum. They also estimated that around 12,000 temples will most probably die in the next few years. But that's not all. An official statement also states that about 1200 deities have gone missing, which means most of them are stolen. As a result of this, the original idols have been replaced by fake deities. This process of replacing original idols with fake counterfeits have been going on for a long time. So something is really going wrong, right? Now this is not social media sensationalism, this is a stark reality that Hindus are facing. If the situation continues like this, in another 100 years, except for a few major temples, all of them will be extinct. So what is going wrong with the Hindus and their temples? What is the root cause of the problem? Long story short, the Indian state. Hindu temples have been destroyed by the very institution that is duty bound to protect the freedom of religion and make sure no discrimination is taking place. In Tamil Nadu, 18 rupees out of every 100 rupees that a devotee donates land in the coffers of the government in government controlled temple, which is almost every temple. In short, in independent India, Hindus are paying a religious tax, a kind of jizya, for donating money to religious causes dear to them. For those who doesn't know what jizya is, it is a form of tax levied on non-Muslims by Islamic rulers. Jizya was first imposed on non-Muslims by Kutubuddin Aibak, and other invaders such as Aurangzeb also practiced the same. But now in 2022, is Tamil Nadu governed by any Muslim invader? No, right? So how and why the Tamil Nadu government is controlling it? In fact, why is the government managing temples at the first place? By the way, the presence of such Hindu-centric legislation is not limited only to the southern states like Karnataka or Andhra Pradesh. Northern states such as Bihar, Himachal Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Odisha and Maharashtra too have legislations which control Hindu temples. Now there is a long history to this. In 1817, the first Madras regulation was passed and the East India Company, a corporate, took over the temples. Their idea of a temple was land, gold, diamonds, wealth. They transported everything they could, and what they could not was left here in the temples. Then in 1840, there was a directive to release the temples back, not because of any love or devotion, but that was a consequence of Christian missionaries who protested that it was disgraceful for Christians to manage pagan temples. Anyway, the gold was taken, so they had no business here anymore. Later, the story of government takeover of temples restarted in 1925, when temples were becoming the hubs of organizing freedom movements. This made the British insecure, so in 1925, with the active support of missionaries, a movement called Self-Respect Movement had gathered momentum in South India. As part of this movement, the Aryan invasion theory had gained significant traction. This was not only done by the British, but also by the proponents of the so-called Dravidian movement. Both contributed in vilifying all institutions associated with Brahmins, who they imagined to be the descendants of the Aryan invaders. The so-called Dravidians, who actually were misinformed and misguided Hindus, they could not understand the unscientific basis of the British politics. The ideologues of that movement held a great sway in the political era of that climate, and in their endeavor to deprive the Brahmins of the power they allegedly held, namely that of running the affairs of the temples. These social justice warriors of the day ended up destroying the livelihoods of several other groups within the Hindu fold as well, which had a specific function and a specific place in the temple ecosystem, which consisted of flower sellers, sculptors, and performing artists, and so on and so forth. But the real damage was yet to begin, and ironically, it happened not under the colonial rule, but when India became a free country. In 1951, the Madras Hindu Religious Endowments Act of 1927 was replaced by the Madras Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowments Act of 1951. The Sirur Mutt in Udupi, along with two other major temples, was notified for takeover by the state under the Act, which led to a great battle in the Madras High Court. And eventually the Supreme Court of India in 1954 had struck down some of the central provisions of the legislation as unconstitutional. But in 1959, a new legislation was brought in by the state government, which effectively rehashed the very same provisions that were struck down 5 years earlier by the highest court of the land. As a result of this, a large number of temples are in a limbo, and devotees are still waiting for justice to be delivered someday. If you read the fundamental rights granted to every Indian citizen in the Constitution and then look at the HRNCE laws, it is absolutely outrageous. The very fact that a certain community is targeted and cannot keep its own places of worship amounts to nothing less than apartheid. Why is it that everyone else can manage their religious affairs, but one community, which is the majority community, cannot? This table illustrates how and where the Hindu temples are discriminated against institutions of other religions. First of all, a temple is a subjective affair. Temples cannot be run with mere employees. You need passion and devotion for it. But right now, since temples are in government control and someone who has no love and devotion towards it is managing it, so naturally they will not keep it well. A temple is not a business, but the soul of the community. It can only be managed with tremendous involvement and devotion. The opposition of this movement's most common argument is, if you give the temples back to the community, will they be able to manage them better? What they mean to say is that in about 79% of the population, there won't be a handful of people with the necessary integrity and competence to do the job. If temples are left to the devotees, they would manage them in a wonderful, vibrant way. There are many modules you could use to run temples. For example, look at the way gurudwaras are run, the amount of food that the langars provide, and how they reach out to people in times of need. Imagine the budget that temples could have, given the amount of land revenue they could earn. They could do so much more. You could attend to pandemics, natural disasters, and other crises that occur in the region. Above all, because they are connected with the community, they can handle such situations in a very effective way by using money efficiently. Unlike the government, where money is filtered through the system and only a few drops trickle down most of the time. The temple happens to be the first choice of an average Hindu in spiritual and religious matters. The temple is the nerve center of the Hindu society and identity, whether it is in terms of upliftment of the poor, education, culture, arts, or plain community strengthening. By taking over temples, the state has paralyzed the Hindu society. Temples in the long run will play a pivotal role in forging a sense of civilizational unity. All the resources required for a cultural resurgence of Bharat lie with the temples, and the temple in turn is in the hands of the state. I firmly believe that in a democratic country, before the election, every responsible citizen must clearly articulate what are the few things that must happen in their country or state. Political parties must know that this is what the people want and they must make their manifestos based on that. But if the people do not say anything and then protest, cry, and make comments after the election is over, there is irresponsible citizenry. Moreover, the handover need not be done hastily in one shot. It is a complex process and should be done properly. The important thing is to first show intent. A commission could be appointed to evolve a process of devolution of our temples back to the community. Above all, after 75 years of free India, if people do not have the freedom to practice their religion the way they want, what kind of freedom is that?